Hey gang, it's Bailey here again. So today we're going to talk about distribution, one of the key foundational elements of your magazine. Do you have good distribution? Do you not have good distribution? This will make all the difference to your advertisers and your readers. So I brought you here today to Manil Park here in Houston, of course. You know how I like to take you in different locations. And behind me is a giant jack. Like, you know how you play jacks as a kid? Guess what this thing is? As you see, it's going off in a million different directions. It's kind of like what your distribution is like. So let's start with the very first thing you need to know about distribution: where you distribute. You know, when you're starting a magazine, it can be hard to figure out where you need to distribute your magazine. Should it, because your magazine's free, assuming if you're watching my channel. So if your magazine's free, where should it go? You know, the best place for you to distribute your magazine is where people are going to be. So anytime somebody has to wait, that's a great place. So any kind of government offices that you can get into, doctors, dentists, nail salons, things like that, doesn't really matter what your magazine is, you typically can find an audience in one of these places. Now, bigger distribution. So I just divide distribution up into three segments: light, medium, and heavy. So in the lighter distribution, that's kind of your doctors and dentists and places like that. Your medium distribution is going to be more like people that could potentially advertise with you. There's some businesses that will advertise with you that have nice traffic flows. And what you want to do is try to get as many magazines there as you can. That's going to make up a bulk of the people that are picking your magazine up. And then your heavy distribution is more places like your grocery stores, shopping malls, places where they have high foot traffic. You can't necessarily control who's picking it up. Those places, you want to definitely distribute there so you have more public visibility, but at the same time, you want to make sure that you're really focusing on the medium and the light, because those two are going to be the ones that actually make all the difference when it comes down to where your magazine's placed at and who's picking it up. You want to try to get in touch with your target market. It's very difficult to do that if you only distribute high traffic areas with a heavy distribution. Those areas are really good for pushing out a ton of magazines, but they're not as good for targeting the people that you want to target. So let's go back a little bit further, shall we? When you're setting up distribution, you have to have distribution points. Now, my recommendation is you have a distributor. In some cities, you'll have a company that does all of the distribution around town, and they're happy to put you in their rotation for $5, $10, $20 a drop. And a drop meaning that they take your magazine and put them at a location, and that is considered a drop. Then you have other distributors, like maybe you have a college student or a retired person that just needs a little bit of extra income, more than willing to take your magazine and distribute it wherever you want. If you go to the website, I'll also be including a free download that will show you a real distribution map that we use, and you can take a look at it and modify it and make it your own, completely for free. My gift to you. So once you have either a big distributor or an independent distributor, then you got to figure out where you want them to be. So my suggestion is, don't limit yourself to doing 10 or 15. Try to get somewhere in the range of about 50 to 60. Now, a big thing that most free premium magazine owners do is they'll put their magazine in 300 or 400 locations. Don't do that. The reason why I say that is because it's not going to give you a realistic expectation of what your readers like and don't like about your magazine. So think about it like this. If you print 1,000 copies, let's say, and you distribute in 400 locations, you roughly have about two copies of the magazine per location. What you don't want to do is start distributing in these areas, and then people are picking them up because there's only a couple there, and they need reading material, they need something to wipe the floor up with. You don't want to be in that kind of situation and thinking, wow, this is going great. If you limit your distribution to smaller areas, then you can keep those stocked. So instead of putting 2 in each location, maybe if you have 50 locations, let's say, you can put 10, 20 in some of your higher traffic areas. That'll give you a good idea if your target market is actually picking them up and taking them with them. It's hard to really know for sure if you have the correct target market if you spread yourself out so thin. So narrow your distribution field, and then as time goes on, you can increase it from there, but you'll also have a good gauge on where you need to distribute to. Now, the next thing that I want to talk to you about is cost. How much does distribution cost? As I said, if you have a distributor, they'll charge you anywhere from $5 to $25 per drop of your magazine. See if that fits within your budget. If it does, that's definitely a better way to go than doing it yourself, I assure you. Now, to that point, you should definitely do it yourself at least once or twice, so you have a good feel for what it feels like and how long it's going to take. So another thing about the cost, aside from the actual dropping the magazine off, you might have a location cost. So location costs are pretty common when you don't work with a big distribution company. The big distribution companies typically will roll the distribution fee and the location fee into one cost for you. In this case, if you're using an independent distributor, then your independent distributor may charge you a fee, but in addition to that, you also have what's called a pocket fee or a slotting fee. Those fees are typically in between $5 and $25 per location. Sometimes they can get up to $50 or even $75 per location. It really just depends on what city you're in and where you're trying to distribute to. Here's the great thing about those locations though. They're typically run by bigger companies that won't just disappear overnight, and they have excellent locations. You might not be able to get into the hottest boutique, you may not be able to get into the best grocery store, you may not be able to get in without these companies. So sit down and talk to them and see if you can negotiate a fee. Typically, when you're talking to them, they'll give you the top dollar rate, and it might be $40 per pocket per location, which can add up very quickly. However, if you sit down and talk to them and say, listen, I'm a first-time publisher, I'm just getting started, I really need a discount on this, and then negotiate with them. You know, I went into a market one time, $50 a pocket, right? But then they also charged a distribution fee of $25 per pocket, so it was $75 a pocket. That was way more than I could afford at the time. And that market actually said, hey, listen, I really need you to work with me on this price. And we talked for like 2 hours, but I got the price down to $15 per pocket plus the distribution. It sometimes sucks to take the time, I'm just gonna be honest with you. But if you take the time, you can get a great deal. So take the time, because it's really, really important. So let's talk about how we can use distribution to expand into new markets. So first and foremost, you should have a defined distribution area. In those 50, 60 locations that you pick, you should have some that are in the heart of the city that branch out kind of sporadically. And you also want to have this published on your website, of course. But as you're beginning to want to take over new territory, it should have a logical progression of your magazine. So let's give you an example, for instance. So I'm here in Houston. So if I want to branch out into other areas, we have Katy, we have Sugarland, we have Pearland, we have the Woodlands, we have Spring. These are all areas that surround Houston, right? If I want to get into those areas, the best way for me to do that is to slowly begin putting magazines in those areas. So here's how you do that. You don't want to go in and say, hey, we're starting a new magazine in this area. What you want to do is you want to take, in the magazine that I'm putting here, we're going to do 5,000 copies, okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take about 500 of those copies, and I'm going to pick one of those areas. So let's say Katy in this instance. I'm going to put 500 copies spread throughout Katy. Now 500 copies is not a lot, so I don't want to have 50 or 60 distribution points. I want to have more like 10, maybe 15 at the most. I'm going to put them in these 10 to 15 locations, and I'm going to monitor it for at least 2 editions to see how it goes. If they're getting picked up really, really fast, then I know I might have something here. If they're getting picked up really, really slow, I'm going to try to do 10 or 15 different locations and try to figure out the best place to distribute the magazine. That's why I say you need to do it for at least 2 editions. Once you've established that Katy is going to have several people picking up the magazine, then you can start saying to advertisers in Katy, hey, we've been distributing it out here now for 2 editions. Are you interested? And this will give you a great platform to start from, because now you already are in the city. After you have enough advertisers to fill a magazine in Katy, then you can branch off your magazine, return your original 500 back to your main city, and then start a whole new magazine in that area. You might have a smaller print one because Katy's significantly smaller than Houston, but the great part is it gives you a great foundation to start from.